Hi, friends. This is a lesson for week 5 on Yves Klein. And I think it's a really interesting intersection with the painting and performance. Um, Here's a picture of him with his paintbrushes. And here is him interacting with one of the models that he uses to make paintings with. Um, and he calls the models that he makes painting with living paintbrushes. Okay, so this is the late 50s here. Um, and this is pre-pop. Even though we're covering this after pop, it's pre-pop. And so sometimes it's good to do it this way, I think, because there's a certain continuity to this performance aspect of this. And I think there's an opportunity for you to reflect on what in pop might be connected to some of what Yves Klein was doing. And I'm sorry about the spelling down there. I just did not even edit that on Klein. It's Klein. Okay. Here's one of his paintings where the models press up against the painting, all covered in blue. Here's an example. You can see the background here. There's musicians, there's an audience, and Klein would be walking around in a tuxedo orchestrating this, pointing and modulating the music and instructing the models as paintbrushes to move in particular ways and to linger in particular times to create the effect he wanted in his paintings. You can see him there leaning over, giving instructions. Here's International Klein Blue, that's IKB 3. This is one of his blue monochrome paintings. He actually got that color patented, and that's International Klein Blue. Here's one where you can see the evidence of the models pressed up against the canvas. Their breasts, their thighs, torsos are all, for the most part, leaving impressions, the paint. This is an interesting piece. One is just really dealing with form and not really adding a kind of political dimension to it. Um, this one is called Hiroshima. And Yves Klein says this: Hiroshima, the shadows of Hiroshima in the desert of the atomic catastrophe, they were a witness without doubt terrible, but nevertheless a witness, both for the hope of survival and for permanence, albeit immaterial of the flesh. And, he's referring to these. These are images where after the atomic bomb, they were so potent of a blast that the shadows of human beings as they were vaporized were kind of like etched into the surfaces that remained. Um, Really haunting. And it's kind of unlike the rest of his work conceptually. But maybe you'll make connections that I haven't seen yet. So I'm really interested to hear from you what you think of this and the other work. Klein was asked, "What is art to you?" Art is health. This health makes us exist. It's the nature of life itself. It is all that we are. Perhaps the line between life and art is getting slimmer, and performance art is a part of that. This is something that he wrote, or it was written about what he said. These are quotes. And as I read this, I'd like you to think about um, one, on surface value, how face value, how you take it in, how you appreciate it, how you don't like it, how you do like it. What does it connect to? And the other is those connections, what might it connect to either in our culture or the culture of the time, and the artwork that we've looked at with pop, okay? And questions about, could this work emerge in a feminist aware culture? A lot of feminist work we're going to start looking at Would this have happened if it wasn't 1958 and it was 1970? Questions like that I want you thinking about. They rolled themselves in color and with their bodies painted my monochromes. They had become living brushes. Having had rejected brushes as too excessively psychological already earlier, I painted with rollers in order to remain anonymous and at a distance between the canvas and myself during the execution, at least intellectually. Now, what a miracle! The brush returned, but this time it is alive. It was the flesh itself that applied the color to the canvas under my direction with perfect precision, allowing me to remain constantly at exact distance x from my canvas, and thus continue to dominate my creation during the entire execution. That way my hands stayed clean. I no longer dirtied myself with paint, not even the tips of my fingers. The work completed itself in front of me with the absolute collaboration of the models, and I was in position to show myself worthy of it by welcoming the work into the tangible world in a fitting manner, wearing a tuxedo. Okay, so we're going to look at a video of one of his performances right now. And I want you to just take it in, of course, but also think about who in pop might it connect to. And I'd love for you to throw that in our discussion below this lesson, or bring it up on Wednesday during the synchronous meeting. Okay.
The late Czechoslovakian painter Yves Klein is ready. The music inspires. These models, covering themselves with paint, are the human brushes with which Klein will give form and color to his creative fever. As some of you may have guessed, Klein's favorite color is blue. Blue is also his favorite form. As a matter of fact, blue is his only form and his only color. Blue are his paintings, for which there is a great demand. Blue is the work toward which our camera is moving, considered by many authoritative critics as the greatest Klein masterpiece, and from which the expert can readily deduct that blue is the dominant color. Dripping blue, the human paintbrushes go and leave their imprints on the canvas, while Klein guides them from far off with the flow of his creative genius. The masterpiece, each phase of whose creation we have had the privilege of recording on film, is on sale for only 4 million francs.
So I hope you enjoyed that, and also thinking about um, maybe the role of the artist, the theatrical element of it, the idea of directorial distance, um, and the performative nature of both the participants, the models, and also Klein in that as showman, as the director. And if I thought it was interesting, some of that blue as color, blue as form, this idea of thinking about maybe Wesselman's still lifes, for example. Could you make a comparison in terms of how they looked at composition and sort of a woman's body as form, but in a very objectified way? And I think there's a valid critique there, but also couldn't that also be used? And so this is like a tension that's, I think, worth us thinking about, both in interrogating the culture at that time and then wondering now how a body could be used, how a body should be used, why, and what are the factors that might influence its acceptability. Because there could be argument from it from a formal artistic standpoint, and there could also be a real cultural interrogation of it, of why it might not have the value that it might have in a different culture. So just a lot of things to think about. I want you thinking about them. And we'll end with this piece. This was a piece that you know he distributed kind of a call to watch his performance, and it really doesn't exist. He claimed he jumped off of a roof and he leapt into the void, and then what he did is he hired photographer to take a couple of photographs, one of him leaping like this, and the other of him leaping like this, with his friends holding a large tarp and catching him. But the way the photographs were able to be printed with the negatives, they could seamlessly stitch it together so that this is the resulting print. So basically, Photoshop before Photoshop. Okay, and in some ways, this idea of an artist leaping into the void, the unknown, questioning limits, questioning boundaries, questioning what is acceptable. These are going to influence some future extreme performances that we'll look at. It's going to be a lot of fun. Any questions or comments? And I'd love to hear from you guys about what you think of Klein's work in below the lesson. Thank you.